Welcome to the Preschool Transitional Kindergarten Learning Foundations, or PTKLF presentation of the Language and Literacy Development Foundational Language Development domain. My name is Olivia Damaris, and I'm a Child Development Consultant in the Early Education Division of the California Department of Education. This pre-recorded presentation is part of a series of presentations developed by the California Department of Education in partnership with WestEd that follows the release of the PTKLF. The purpose of these presentations is to provide a snapshot of each domain covered in the publication. This presentation is focused on the foundational language development subdomain, and we are joined by the writers of this domain, Amy Woodbridge, Anne-Marie Weiss, and Rosalie Odine. For an overview of the PTKLF publication, including its structure, organizations, and major revisions, please visit our prior pre-recorded presentation titled PTKLF Introduction. The agenda for today is to first provide acknowledgments for the contributions of this specific domain. Then we will move into an overview of the approach and organization of this subdomain, including an overview of the diversity of children's language and literacy development, and provide examples of foundations in each strand: listening and speaking, foundational literacy skills, reading, and writing. Then we will move into a section on how teachers can support language and literacy development. Finally, we will end with a closing and look at future pre-recorded presentations. We wanted to take a moment to list some acknowledgments for individuals who contributed significant time to the development of this domain. In addition to the California Department of Education and WestEd team, we had our WestEd lead writers, Amy Woodbridge, Anne-Marie Weiss, and Rosalie Odine. We also consulted with subject matter experts, Allison Bailey from UCLA, Anne Blackstock-Bernstein from UCLA, Anne Cunningham from UC Berkeley, Beverly Falk from City College of New York, and Rebecca Silverman from Stanford University. We also had specific reviewers who brought the lens of inclusion, cultural diversity, or multilingual learners: Julie Washington from UC Irvine, Margaret Gillis from SRI, Mary McLean from the University of Florida, Marlene Zepeda from Cal State LA, and Dina Castro from Boston University. For this domain in particular, we also had several contributors who provided examples of child speech in different languages, as well as reviewers who provided authentic examples from various cultural backgrounds. We would also like to thank our many educators and interest holders who participated in focus groups and provided feedback. I will now pass it on to the WestEd lead writers to talk through the details of this domain.
Thank you. We'll now go through the overall approach to developing this subdomain. Today, we will focus on foundational language development. One of the two subdomains in the overarching language and literacy development domain. The foundational language development domain, subdomain, differs from English language development in that it focuses on the foundations of language development for all children, regardless of their home language, which may be English, Spanish, Mandarin, or any one of the many languages spoken in California. English language development, a second subdomain, is just for children with a home language other than English, who are learning English in preschool or transitional kindergarten. The 2008 version of the Preschool Learning Foundations had language and literacy development and English language development as two standalone domains. Let's start with a definition. The foundational language development subdomain describes language and literacy development in children ages 3 to 5.5 in any language, including English, and also elevating the home language as a linguistic asset that multilingual learners bring to early education programs. Foundational language development takes an inclusive approach, representing language development across languages, and includes notes alongside foundations to highlight when language development varies between languages. This domain is intended for use with multilingual and monolingual children, and this slide presents 4 examples. Monolingual English-speaking children, multilingual children who speak 2 or more languages at home. This might be a child who speaks Spanish and English at home, or a child who speaks Mandarin and English at home. Multilingual children who speak 1 language at home and are learning another language at school. For example, a child who speaks Spanish at home and is learning English at school. A child who speaks English at home and is learning Yurok in a language revitalization program. Or a child who uses American Sign Language at home and is attending a school for the deaf with instruction in American Sign Language and English. Or multilingual children who speak a language other than English at home and the same language at school. For example, a child who speaks Spanish at home and attends a Spanish language program. Or a child who speaks Mandarin at home and attends a Mandarin language program, but may have some exposure to English in the community. Let's look at some of the high-level differences you will see when compared to the 2008 version of the Preschool Learning Foundations. As mentioned, the foundational language development subdomain takes an approach that is inclusive of the many languages spoken by children and families across California. Foundation statements describe development in any language. The examples that accompany the foundations include child speech in 14 languages to represent the diversity of California's children and families. The subdomain includes a new strand, foundational literacy skills. Some foundations that previously appeared in the reading strand now appear in foundational literacy skills. The knowledge and skills represented in this strand are important not only for reading, but for writing as well. And having a separate strand reflects that importance. In addition, having this new strand enhances alignment with the Common Core state standards for English language arts. One final major change is the expansion of the writing strand, which is now organized into 2 substrands, writing skills and writing as communication. When children in preschool and transitional kindergarten are in the beginning stages of writing development, the additional foundations in this strand emphasize the developing understanding of writing as a means to communicate, as well as the interrelated nature of the foundations of reading and writing. Now we will look at the approach to diversity, equity, and inclusion in foundational language development as it relates to multilingualism, children's language varieties, families and communities' language and literacy practices, and the inclusion of children with disabilities. The foundational language development subdomain acknowledges multilingualism as a strength. Research affirms the importance of supporting multilingualism to strengthen children's skills and knowledge in all their languages. Multilingual learners develop a vast array of language skills and are learning when and how to draw on their different skills to help them navigate different communication needs. This practice is known as translanguaging, a term that refers to the ways in which individuals use the full range of their linguistic knowledge to understand and communicate. One common aspect of translanguaging is often referred to as code switching, when an individual uses two or more languages in a single conversation or within a single phrase or sentence. The use of translanguaging in educational settings can aid children's understanding of ideas, support their home language development, and create a strong connection between schools, families, and communities. Practices that support translanguaging also provide a critical resource for communities engaged in language revitalization efforts, such as Native nations and tribal communities. It is important for all teachers to promote continued development of the home language. Whether the instructional program provides home language instruction or they speak the child's home language, they can always partner with families. The foundational language development subdomain also acknowledges language varieties as a linguistic asset. Languages do not have a single correct form. Diverse varieties of English, such as African American English, Chicano English, and General American English, all use the full range of linguistic features to communicate meaning. Children who are learning more than one variety of English bring additional linguistic strengths, such as an awareness about the features of language and when and how to use each variety. As children learn the language used in early education programs and beyond, they should be supported in maintaining and utilizing the strengths they bring from their home language varieties for their continued language development and a continued connection to their home culture. Foundational language development as a subdomain also elevates families and communities' language and literacy practices. We know that children learn how to use language in the context of their families and communities, and language use and conventions vary by culture. For example, we know that different cultures have different norms around aspects of language and communication, such as eye contact, body language, gestures, tone of voice, and the ways in which children participate in conversations and address adults. Children also engage in literacy practices in the context of their families and communities, which are shaped by culture. For example, many communities engage in a tradition of oral language storytelling, through which children develop both literacy and content knowledge. As children engage in language and literacy activities in early education programs, they should be supported in maintaining and utilizing the knowledge they bring from their home and community literacy practices to support their language and literacy development and to maintain a continued connection to their home culture and community. The foundational language development subdomain also adopts an inclusive approach to support children with disabilities. Communication is not always spoken or signed. Children communicate in various ways, such as by using gestures or augmentative and alternative communication devices, like card systems or tablet communication devices. This is particularly important to keep in mind with children with disabilities, who may also have developmental differences that shape the path of language development. Autism spectrum disorder, speech or language impairment, specific learning disabilities, deafness, and developmental delays can shape the pace at which children learn different aspects of language and the ways they demonstrate their knowledge. Children with speech or language impairment or other disabilities can still learn two or more languages, and being multilingual does not make speech or language impairments or other disabilities more pronounced. For children with disabilities, teachers should reference the child's individualized education program and regularly communicate with a child's IEP team to assist in making accommodations.
We'll now go through the overall organization of this subdomain. The organization of the foundational language development subdomain includes strand 1, listening and speaking, which includes the substrands of vocabulary, grammar, and language use. Strand 2, foundational literacy skills, includes phonological awareness, alphabetics in print, and concepts about print. Strand 3, reading, includes literacy interest and response, and comprehension and analysis of age-appropriate text. And strand 4, writing, includes writing skills and writing as communication. This is an example of how the foundations are structured. Each foundation is numbered, with the first number representing the strand, and the second representing the order of the foundations within that strand. The foundation on screen is from strand 2, foundational literacy skills, and is the fourth foundation in this strand. So the foundation number is 2.4. Next, 2 foundation statements appear underneath this label. In the left-hand column, we have the early foundation, which describes the skills and knowledge children demonstrate between around the ages of 3 to 4.5. In the right-hand column is the later foundation, which describes the skill and knowledge children demonstrate between around the ages of 4 to 5.5. Finally, below these foundation statements are a series of examples. We have only included one example on this slide. The first 1 or 2 examples for each foundation are aligned to demonstrate the developmental progressions in similar or parallel contexts.
Now we'll present some examples within each strand. The first strand is listening and speaking, which focuses on the development of spoken and signed language. It addresses how children develop vocabulary and grammar, as well as their knowledge of how to use language to interact with others, communicate in meaningful ways, and learn about the world around them. This sample foundation comes from the vocabulary substrand within the listening and speaking strand. It focuses on understanding and using vocabulary. The early foundation is understand and use words for objects, actions, and attributes frequently experienced in everyday life, such as through play, conversations, or stories. The later foundation is understand and use an increasing variety of words for story, objects, actions, and attributes experienced in everyday life, such as through play, conversations, or stories. For example, a child may share in English, "I like to play with my superhero guy." When the teacher replies, "Your superhero guy, tell me more about that," the child explains, "He jumps up so high." Then in the later foundation, where children use an increasing variety of words, a child would share, "He sticks and he crawls and he can jump higher than a huge skyscraper." We can see how the child's vocabulary went from "he jumps so high" to a wider variety of words to describe the superhero guy and what he can do, and even offers a comparison of how high he can jump. The second strand is foundational literacy skills, which addresses skills that contribute to children's future reading and writing development. These skills include phonological awareness, knowledge of alphabetics and print, and an understanding of the concept of print. This sample foundation comes from the phonological awareness substrand within the foundational literacy skills strand. It focuses on recognizing and blending sounds. The early foundation is when presented with 2 single-syllable words, such as sand and box, blend them into a compound word in speech with adult support or the support of pictures or objects. The later foundation is when presented with syllables and individual sounds, blend them into words in speech with adult support or the support of pictures or objects. In the early foundation, a child might blend the words sun and shine into the compound word sunshine with support from an adult, a picture, or another object. Then in the later foundation, children begin to blend together the individual sounds or syllables of words. For example, if a teacher asks a child to put the sounds s, n together to make a word, the child would respond, sun. We can see how the progression moves from a child blending compound words into being able to blend sounds into words. While these examples are in English, phonological awareness, including blending sounds and blending words, in children's home languages supports literacy development. We have some rich examples from languages other than English in the PTKLF publication. The third strand, reading, includes interest in and engagement with literacy, as well as understanding of stories and informational texts that are read to them. This sample foundation comes from the comprehension and analysis of age-appropriate texts substrand in the reading strand. It focuses on understanding stories. The early foundation is demonstrate basic understanding of main characters or events in a story after the child has experienced the story a few times. The later foundation is demonstrate understanding of details in the story, including knowledge of characters, events, and ordering of events, and use their increased understanding of story structure to predict what might come next when asked. Ways that children may demonstrate understanding include answering questions, retelling or reenacting the story, responding with body language, and creating artwork. Children may demonstrate understanding of a story using any language they know. The early foundation is focused on demonstrating basic understanding after the child has experienced the story a few times. For example, a child might experience the book And Tango Makes Three a few times. In this book, a penguin chick has two penguin daddies. The child might sign, I have two daddies too, demonstrating an understanding of the main characters of the story. Then, in the later foundation, children understand and recall more details in the story and are able to make predictions about what will come next. For example, during a reading of the book, I Want My Hat Back, when a teacher asks, how will the bear get his hat back? A child may communicate, he's going to get the rabbit, making a prediction about what is going to happen. We can see how the progression goes from understanding the main points of a story to more critical thinking and deeper understanding of story structure and the connections between story events and character actions. The last strand is writing, which focuses on writing skills, such as fine motor skills, and children's beginning abilities to communicate ideas through writing. This sample foundation comes from the writing as communication substrand within the writing strand. It focuses on dictating thoughts and ideas to be conveyed in writing. The early foundation is engage in dictating thoughts and ideas when an adult offers to help with writing them down. The later foundation is demonstrate interest in conveying extended thoughts and ideas in writing, engaging the help of an adult. In the early foundation, a child who has drawn a picture of a pumpkin might agree when a teacher offers to label their drawing with a title. Together, the two might come up with the title, My Pumpkin. Then, in the later foundation, children demonstrate interest in conveying more extended thoughts and ideas in writing. Here, a child might ask the teacher to help them write at the top of their drawing, "My favorite thing about fall is decorating a pumpkin." We can see how the progression goes from an adult-initiated suggestion, which shows the child that their ideas can be expressed in writing, to a child expressing an interest to use writing to communicate their ideas.
The foundations also have many supporting sections of examples for how educators can support children's language and literacy development. We will highlight a few main categories of educator strategies and instructional supports. Literacy instruction during preschool and TK should be play-based, but the implementation of playful learning may look different depending on the skill being practiced. Supporting foundational literacy skills, like phonological awareness and letter-sound correspondence through play, requires planned, explicit instruction drawn from an evidence-based curriculum with specific scope and sequence. Rhymes, word games, and hands-on materials can support this instruction. Gaining fine motor control is an important early skill to support writing development. Offer lots of different materials for children to practice their fine motor skills. Children can write using pencils on paper, sticks in sand, crayons on easels, chalk on sidewalks, or fingers in shaving foam, among many other possibilities. For children who are learning English in the classroom, educators can also draw on practices to explicitly support English language development. These practices include speaking in clear, direct English and giving the child additional time to respond, as well as scaffolding speech and literacy activities with gestures, actions, props, and other objects. Before reading English language books, teachers can introduce keywords that children will experience in the book as a way of aiding multilingual learners' comprehension and vocabulary growth. Having a language-rich environment is also important. A language-rich environment is one where children hear language being used by adults and peers and have opportunities to share their own thoughts. Explicitly teaching vocabulary can support children, especially multilingual learners, to engage with stories or activities that use the words, but most language development occurs through conversation and daily interactions. Open-ended questions offer opportunities for children to express their thoughts and ideas. During conversations with children, pausing to give children time to formulate their thoughts supports communication and active participation in conversation. For multilingual learners, develop a supportive environment with opportunities to engage in conversation with others in their home language and use phrases in their home language when possible during daily activities. Literacy development is also supported by print-rich environments with many different types of written materials, such as books, posters, toys, food packaging, signs, and labels, in languages the children are learning in the classroom and at home. Engaging with print, both with adult support and independently during play, is supportive of literacy development. Reading daily from storybooks and informational texts support children developing an interest in literacy and a concept about print. Choosing books that represent the diversity of the children in the classroom, such as books showing children's cultures or home languages, can support children's interest in reading and comprehension of the stories. Families may also share stories, songs, or rhymes from their culture or in their home language. Incorporating home connections is also a powerful tool. Authentic, reciprocal communication between teachers and families foster a strong home-school connection. Because children may demonstrate their language development in any language or language varieties they speak, including languages or varieties their teacher may not know or use, Communication with families is necessary if teachers and family members are to understand and support children's development. One strategy is to communicate with families about culturally relevant storytelling, books, or games from home that can be integrated into the classroom environment and literacy activities. Teachers can invite parents to lead those activities.
For a more detailed view of the foundational language development subdomain, please read the full document published on CDE's website. Future pre-recorded presentations will also be published on the CDE website as they are available. To visit the CDE website, please go to https://www.cdfoundations.asp. Thank you for listening to today's pre-recorded presentation.